Hi. I don't know where all this video is going to be going. I'm assuming anyone seeing it knows who I am, but I'll just tell you really quickly. My name's Dawn Weaver, and I worked for Jonathan Welton at Welton Academy for a few years. I've known him for 5 years. I've been a student of the school and personal friend of his for a while. Those of you who are friends with him probably are getting a really jacked up, untrue, manipulative story from him about what's currently going on. He's trying to blame everybody around him instead of taking his own crap and dealing with it. It's been his MO from the very beginning. And I just found out that he is currently trying to say that the inappropriate physical stuff that happened between he and I is mutual, that it was partly my fault, and fuck that, because it's not true. I'm going to warn you that there's going to be a lot of F words, maybe a few hells, a few goddams, but that's because I'm really pissed. So, a couple of the people who are around him right now trying to help his stupid ass reported the fact that he's trying to blame me, partially, and that at the very least, he has his wife convinced that I am equally at fault. So I was told that I should make a video clearing the air and letting everyone know how fucked up that is and how unattracted I was to him. So here we go. From day one, pretty much, Jonathan has pursued me in a way that I am now finding out was very inappropriate. I had nothing to show for myself when he hired me, except for the fact that he'd seen me at my church when he came to speak there, and he thought I was cute. I used to think that his prophetic insight, which I don't know that I've ever gotten a really great prophetic word from the guy, but I thought of him as a prophet, and he saw me at my church and chose to give me a job that I wasn't qualified for, and I just thought, probably sees something in me, he probably sees something really great, and he wants to help me. He wants to, I have a vision for my life, and I have something that I want to do. I have a mission, and this guy can help me get there. And I bought into it. I thought that that's what had happened, but after hearing the stories that I've heard recently and just remembering some of the stories that I've had, interactions with him that haven't been good, I'm realizing that I can't find any truth in our relationship whatsoever. I think every bit of it was really gross, and I think every bit of it was him trying to get me to a place where I would be completely compliant. And from our first missions trip, he started doing things that were not so inappropriate that it would cause me to be super scared, but it definitely made me extremely uncomfortable. The very first missions trip, he grabbed my hand. I hardly know the guy at this point. He grabs my hand and puts it on his chest and says, I'm really nervous. Can you please pray for me? And so I did, and I thought, this is weird. It definitely crosses all the social normal boundaries, but he seems great and he's really affectionate with everyone else, so I'm pretty sure this isn't me being singled out. I think it's just normal for him, and even though it's not normal to me, whatever. And so I prayed for him, and then I pulled my hand back, and he put his head on my shoulder, but not on the top of my shoulder, right here on my shoulder, which, when you have big boobs, that's on the top of your boob. And so I remember sitting there super uncomfortable, being like, I can't take a full breath, because if I do, his face is going to be in my breast, and I don't want that. So I sat there, nervous for my first missions trip with the guy, with his head basically on the top of my chest, and taking little tiny shallow breaths and thinking, oh shit, what did I do? I just accepted this amazing job, and oh shit, is this going to be how it is? And then nothing else happened. Nothing else. That whole trip seemed really off. He asked me to his room a few times, but he kept the door open while I was there, and I wouldn't have gone inside if he had closed the door, and I just thought, okay, that was just weird, and maybe he's kind of quirky, And so the next trip, he also, while I was sitting in the seat next to him, kept putting his arm around me through my arm. Like, it was weird, and he tried to get me to sleep with my head on his shoulder. And I remember thinking, like, everyone around us thinks we're together in a romantic way. Like, for sure, everyone thinks that, like, I'm his wife right now. And that was so weird for me. And I remember when I pretended to fall asleep because I didn't want to continue interacting with him. And I just had my head up and was falling asleep, pretending to. And he said, "Oh, you can lay your head on my shoulder." And I said, "No, I sleep just fine with my head upright." And so I sat there pretending to sleep, and from that day forward, never booked myself on the same flight with Jonathan ever again. There were a couple times, I know the last time we went on a missions trip, coming back from Argentina, we had the option to sit next to each other. I could have bumped up to his flight. There was another time, but I can't remember which flight it was. In any case, I specifically made sure that I never got booked on the same flight with him again. And that day, that last one, there was a spot next to him and I could have bumped up, but I chose to stay in the airport an extra couple of hours because I didn't want to. And I remember he asked me he was like, "I'm going to go on now and you should stay in the line and get your name on the standby list. And if you get called, you should come on." And he texted me about, I don't know, 15 minutes later and was like, "I saved a seat for you, or do you think you're going to make it?" And I said, "Nope, the standby list is way too long." I was actually in a different part of the airport. I completely lied to the guy, and it's because I didn't want to get stuck in a seat next to him for however many hours it was going to be. I specifically did not ever want to be stuck next to him and have no way to get out. And those two instances are whatever, but it's enough to have made me uncomfortable enough to lie, It definitely started to go a lot further. There were a couple times that he held my hand during movies at the movie theaters. The first time I was still on staff with him, and I remember being incredibly uncomfortable, and I'm not talking about oh, this is a little bit weird. It's gut churning disgust, but Jonathan has this way that he talks about affection, and the whole culture that he's created around affection in Welton Academy is really disgusting, and it's hard and abusive, and it's hard to extricate the truth about it when you're around him. And I understand what it's like to have your top love language be touch and not get touched enough. I do get that. And so when he held my hand, I remember then trying to justify it as this is inappropriate, but I think he just is I don't think he means anything by it. I definitely can't say anything. I saw what happened to people who would say stuff to Jonathan. I have really good friends who got completely just pushed out because they couldn't 100% comply with everything that he wanted them to comply with. And they could see through his bull crap and call him on shit, and they didn't last long. And so here's this young girl who has her dream job, and her boss is holding her hand in a movie theater. What am I supposed to do? What, you tell me, what the fuck am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to go to the guy who doesn't take correction well and tell him that he shouldn't have been holding my hand? No, you take care of yourself and you justify it because you want to keep your job, and you convince yourself that it's normal enough and harmless enough that it's okay. The second time he held my hand during a movie, I had gone to see him. He was speaking at a place near me, and I went to see him. And I was no longer on staff. We went and we got some dinner, caught up, and then he was like, "Let's go to a movie." So we went to a movie, and I remember thinking on the way there, I wonder if there's anything else we could do, because I don't really want to be in a movie theater with him. But I couldn't think of anything else to do, and I'd driven there specifically for that, and so I was like, all right, I guess let's just go to a movie. So we went to a movie, and he held my hand from pretty much the credits, or whatever, the opening credits, onward. And I was so distracted by him holding my hand and so disgusted by it and so like, God, this is uncomfortable. What do I do? Trying to think of a way to like politely decline without making everything worse. That I just completely missed like the whole movie. You know, I couldn't even pay attention to the movie because it was so awful to be holding his hand. And again, just so concerned with his comfort that I didn't say anything. And when we left, he pushed me up against my car and held me there while he was hugging me for way beyond, like, even beyond what's normal for him. And then he stepped away, he took my face in both of his hands, and he kissed both of my cheeks. And I remember thinking, this was the first time I ever, like, had this thought, but I remember thinking, I was like, if I would let him, he would totally kiss me right now. And it was at that point that I was just like, okay, I gotta go. And I just kind of wiggled out of it and literally had to, like, push him off of me and, like, climb into my car to try and leave. And it's just, it's so weird to me to look back on the way that I justified it and made it okay in my mind. I understand why I had to when I was on staff. I don't understand why I did it then, except that Jonathan's really good at looking good, and he's able to paint a really beautiful picture about himself, and his actions don't line up with the stuff that he says at all, and somehow you don't catch it, like when you're close to him, you know? It's somehow, Eyes of Honor isn't part of his life. Zero. Like, zero. You know, God isn't a controlling God, so we shouldn't be controlling people. Not a part of his life. Like, zero part of his life. As I'm looking back now on my time at staff, I realized, like, I got in serious trouble one time for never answering the phone when he would call. And I've beaten myself up about that all this time, like, thinking, like, how could I have had my dream job and not even done a good job at it? Like, I didn't do a good job. I wasn't a good employee. Why? That's the only job I've ever really wanted, and it's the only job that I've ever not been the best I could possibly be at it. And as I've looked back over it, I've suddenly started to remember the thing that I would get in so much trouble for was that I would never answer the phone when he would call. And I went back to how it felt when he would call me, and I remember shaking and, like, starting to feel sick to my stomach. And, like, when I had deadlines and stuff where I had to be in contact with him a lot, I literally would just be, like, sick and feel a heaviness on my chest and my shoulders all the time. And I don't know how I wanted to stay friends with him afterwards. I don't know. It doesn't make any fucking sense that I haven't noticed it sooner. But if you're somebody who's, like, just finding out about this stuff, like, don't feel bad. Like, I was as close as anybody to the guy, and I somehow believed him. Like, I somehow believed him, and I don't know how he was able to convince me. But he was. And now he's convincing everybody still, you know, like, he's convincing his wife that I wanted to hold his hand. I was also attracted to him. Like, fuck that, I was not attracted to that. Like, oh my God. Yeah, you know what? The really cute girl from Montana who you hired at 25 gave her dream job. She wanted to hold your hand, Jonathan. She wanted to. It wasn't about the job. It wasn't about the fact that you're her mentor. It wasn't about the fact that you convinced her that it was just healthy affection. Like, she wanted to hold your hand. I am attracted to you. Yeah, fuck that. That's not true. Like, ask Gabe and Louise and Renee. They're the first people that I told this story to. Ask them how I described you. I described you as asexual. I am so unattracted to you that it's, like, negative attraction. Like, I don't know, dude. Like, go ahead and tell everyone that I wanted to. You know, in that load of crap that you send out to everybody, like, that stupid letter that's just a bunch of shit. Like, we all know you don't mean it. We all know you're not sorry. So, whatever. Send it out if you want to, but we all know you don't mean it. And the wording in it just simply doesn't cut it, dude. Like, it's a pile of shit. And when you're talking about, I was a little bit too affectionate, and I've never actually had sexual interaction with any of these women. It's like, yeah, dude, because you would have had to rape me. Like, I didn't want to have sex with you, man. Like, you would have had to fucking rape me in order to have sex with me. So just remember that, Karen. Like, there's two people in every one of these scenarios, and your husband was not the one who was holding back. It was the girls. Like, the girls did not want him. The girls did not want the touch. The girls had to push him off of them. Like, we didn't want it. If we had, I could have had sex with you, Jonathan. I didn't want to. Like, you would have. I did not. So go ahead and send that letter to everybody. Tell them that sex never happened. But just remember, it's not because of you. It's because of everybody else that's been involved in this situation. Like, that letter I sent to you that said, I hope to someday reconnect. I hope to, I want your best. And I think you, like, I want everything to burn now. Like, I don't want you to have shit. And I can't believe that after everything, now you're also lying about it. Like, about me in the situation. Like, not only did you violate me, violate our trust, violate the position that you held in my life, but now you're trying to lie about it and say that I wanted it. Like, fuck you. Like, oh yeah, let's save all the victims of sex trafficking. Let's care about justice. Let's care about truth. Let's care about the porn people and, like, go to the porn convention and, oh, Jonathan, what happened with Annie Donowald? Why aren't you friends anymore? Should we call her up and find out? I'd be interested to know what stories she has. Like, come on, man. There's other stories out there, and they're going to start coming up. And let's hope all the girls didn't want to have sex with you, because if some of them did, I don't know. Anyways, whatever. I'm being ugly, and I don't care, because I'm really mad, and I'm sorry that I swore. I tried to get through it. This is actually the second video I made. Tried to get through it without saying the F word, but I did better in this one. In any case, I don't believe you're going to get better unless you start to admit that you're actually a predator. You're not a spiritual father, man. You're not a leader. You're not a spiritual father. You're not an apostle. You are somebody who has propped yourself up in a place that you don't belong, and you're a predator, and you need to go get help. You have preyed on me from the very first day until now. And there's a possibility that I'm just so mad that that's how I see it currently, but I don't think so. And honestly, I'm so over anybody who's standing up for you at this point. Like, I don't have any fucking room for people who are like, oh, Jonathan's so delicate. Like, don't attack his identity, though. Like, be gentle, be kind, be gracious. You don't deserve that right now. Like, you need the truth, and I don't care what the result is of me giving you the truth. Like, I hope the truth does set you free. I hope that the truth, eventually gets through to you, but I don't think it will. And I think that, I just think that you are so far from being better that it's unbelievably, it just seems impossible to me right now, and I don't even care. Like, you need help. Get help. There's people around you who want to help you. Let them.